there's an absolute market for it, but the job of leaders is to actually lead people in a positive direction rather than playing to their basest instincts. And let's talk about this debate about capitalism, Will. I think this is long overdue. I think we as leaders, particularly in the Republican Party, need to make the case for capitalism, the greatest system known to the history of man to lift people up from poverty.
Yeah, buddy. Vivek. Like cake. Good morning. Rise and freedom. Now I want cake. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. How you doing, guys? Congratulations to Vivek Ramaswamy. This is now the second Libertarian nationalist who has won their Republican election this year, statewide election. That makes two. Congratulations to Vivek Ramaswamy for triumphing over the Israel grifters. The Groypers defeated. Oh. The year is 1790. The war is won. The Constitution is ratified. And George Washington is riding through the country that still smells like gunpowder and wet ink. George Washington arrived in Newport, Rhode Island, and a Jewish congregation comes out to meet him. Their warden, Moses Seixas, hands the president a letter. He thanks God that his people, historically stripped of the rights of free citizens everywhere they'd ever lived, now dwell under a government that gives to bigotry no sanction and to persecution no assistance. Washington writes back. He takes Seixas' own words and sends them home with the full weight of the Republic behind them. And he closes the book of Micah. He closes with the book of Micah. Everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none that make him afraid. Remember that letter from George Washington, because somebody spent the last several years trying to make sure you never read it. The American right has a Jewish problem right now, and it was cooked up in a server farm somewhere between Karachi and Lagos before it ever appeared on your timelines. Foreign accounts, anonymous profiles, synthetic amplification dressed up in red, white, and blue, pointing at a 121-year-old forgery like they found the Rosetta Stone in somebody's grandma's attic. We have the receipts. Today we'll lay them out. The history your teachers will skip. The Polish-Jewish immigrant who financed the siege of Yorktown personally lent money to Madison and Jefferson at no interest. Thought that was only for the insiders. And died broke at 44, while Congress found something better to do with his repayment. The forged document that gave Hitler his blueprint and apparently still has enough gas in the tank to run through a ringlit podcast studio in 2026. The Ron Paul Institute and what it let fester for far too long in the name of non-interventionism. And the civilizational argument, the one that has nothing to do with neocons or evangelical end times charts, for why the American founding and the Jewish tradition were never strangers to begin with. Also today, the Trump Department of Justice has indicted James Comey over a photograph of seashells on a beach. One of the finest constitutional minds in the country joins me to explain how badly that ends in federal court. And a writer who's earned his opinions the hard way joins me to tell what the Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto gets right, what it means for Vivek Ramaswamy, James Wiley, and others out there now calling themselves libertarian nationalists running across the country on the platform of a manifesto published on a little-known website known as forlibertyshop.com. Did you think that the revolution was going to be on, like, the libertarianrepublic.com or some other fancy-sounding name? Nah, homie G. So we're going to talk to you this morning, talk to Kevin Boyd this morning at 8:30 about the rising tide of libertarian nationalism in this country, as well as the fact that Jeremy Kauffman, another self-identified libertarian nationalist, has announced that he is running for chair of the entire Libertarian Party, with his platform being to abolish the Libertarian Party. Let's just say we couldn't be more excited. Austin Peterson here. This is the Wake Up America show. It's time to rise and freedom. Click that like button. Guys, we've got a phenomenal show for you today. Thank you all for your financial generosity so far. You're gifting each other subs. It's so generous of you to do that because you're helping each other out and you're helping the channel. Everything that you buy at forlibertyshop.com this morning, every purchase that you make in the store adds up until we hit $100, when all of a sudden lights and sirens will go off and you've unlocked phase 1 of your bonus content. What is the bonus content? Well, that means you guys, instead of going to commercials when we get the Judge and Kevin Boyd on in the second hour, you can watch our little 5-minute mini documentary about a hero from the American Revolution. So unlock that bonus content early and often. Head over to forlibertyshop.com. Get yourself some Founding Flavors coffee and some Libertarian nationalist merch while you're at it. Are we ready? Ready? Let's go. Juice, 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 juice. Before there was the United States, there was an idea. And the idea didn't come from a think tank or a donor retreat or some guy on Twitter with a marble statue profile picture. It came from a civilization that understood something very simple. Free people need law, moral order, and a government that doesn't walk around acting like Pharaoh with a zoning board. When the Puritans crossed the Atlantic in the 1600s, they didn't describe themselves as Englishmen building a colony. They described themselves as Israelites crossing the Red Sea into the Promised Land. John Winthrop, the first governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, stood on his ship in 1630 and quoted Moses directly, Deuteronomy 30, telling his people they were entering into a covenant with God, and if they broke it, they would be consumed. That's a little bit more than just light travel reading. That's not welcome aboard, enjoy the complimentary peanuts. That is Sinai language applied to the New World. When the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, William Bradford opened his account of the voyage by quoting the 107th Psalm. When colonial law codes were written, the New Haven colony in 1655 produced 79 statutes, half of them directly from the Hebrew Bible. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, the foundational universities of American intellectual life all required the study of Hebrew, not because they were trying to impress a rabbi at a dinner party, because the founding generation understood that civilization does not build itself. The founding generation of Americans did not just keep a Bible on the shelf next to the fireplace for decoration like every Airbnb in Branson. They read it, they studied it, they argued it, they structured their civil institutions around it. And the Bible that they reached for again and again, it was not just the New Testament. It was the Old Testament. It was the Hebrew Bible. So when the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, the same day that they signed the Declaration of Independence, assigned Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson the task of designing a national seal, here's what happened. Adams went into Greek mythology because, of course, he did. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin both went straight to Exodus. Franklin's design was Moses standing on the shore, extending his hand over the Red Sea, overwhelming Pharaoh with the motto, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." Jefferson's design was the children of Israel in the wilderness, led by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Two of the least conventionally religious men in the founding generation got one chance to design the national symbol, and both of them basically said, give me Moses, give me Pharaoh getting wrecked, and make it patriotic. That's not a coincidence. That is a civilization identifying its own DNA. The Hebrew Republic, the idea that free people could govern themselves under a covenant of law rather than a king, was not background noise to the American founding. This was the template. The argument, which was widely made at the time, was that the American constitutional republic had its roots in the Hebrew Commonwealth, the dignity of the individual, the rule of law over the rule of men, the idea that rights are endowed by a creator and not granted by some dead-eyed bureaucrat in a short-sleeve button-down. All of it runs through a tradition that predates Athens, predates Rome, and predates the British common law that the founders were also simultaneously drawing on at the same moment. So this country was built on more than one civilization's shoulders, and one of those civilizations was Jewish. Now let's talk about a man that most Americans have never heard of, because apparently our education system had room for him. Make a diorama of the water cycle, but not this. His name was Haym Salomon. He was born in 1740 in Lesno, Poland. He was a Jewish merchant and a polyglot. He was a financial genius who arrived in 1775, which is the same year the revolution began. He joined the Sons of Liberty almost immediately, which is important because that means that he didn't wait to see how things were going to go. He didn't check the polls. He didn't ask whether the branding was strong enough. He arrived in the middle of a revolution and he picked a side. In 1776, the British arrested Haym Salomon on espionage charges. They used him as an interpreter for Hessian mercenaries because he spoke multiple European languages while serving that role. He quietly worked to convince Hessian soldiers to desert the British cause and join the Americans. So the British basically gave him a job, and he used the job to undermine the British from the inside. That is more than patriotism. That is elite level workplace sabotage, SEAL Team 6, double cross, the CIA if they were the good guys. Or were they not? That is sabotage for liberty. He was arrested a second time in 1778, this time on more serious charges. The British reportedly sentenced him to death, alleging he was involved in a plot to burn British ships in New York Harbor. He escaped. He fled to Philly with almost nothing. And in Philadelphia, he rebuilt fast. He became the primary broker for Robert Morris, the superintendent of finance. He was the man responsible for keeping the Continental Army alive financially. Morris's diary references Haym Salomon more than any other financial partner. And the way that this worked was simple. The Continental Congress was broke. I know, shocking, right? Congress running out of money is one of our oldest national traditions. There you go. Congress running out of money is apparently one of our oldest national traditions. Right up there with fireworks, unpaid debts, and pretending the federal government is temporary. France, Spain, and the Dutch had extended loans to the American cause, but foreign loans in the 1770s were paper. They were not specie. They were not hard currency that you could use to buy food or uniforms or ammunition. You couldn't walk up to a farmer in these times and say, "Would you take this elegant promissory note for 6 barrels of flour and the survival of liberty?" Salomon converted those loans into actual usable money. He sold bills of exchange. He found buyers for those bills, and he operated at little to no commission to himself. So he didn't do this for a profit. He was a patriot who happened to have the exact skill that the entire American Revolution would need for it to succeed. Over the course of his work with Morris from 1781 to 1784, Salomon facilitated over $650,000 in financing for the Continental cause in a period when that used to be real money. We accidentally spent that on a diversity consultant for the Department of Turnips money. He also made direct personal loans at no interest to James Madison. I was told that that was a goy slop lie. I thought they only lent money to one another at no interest. I just feel like Nick Fuentes and the Groypers have just been lying to us, man. I've just been getting the impression that they haven't been honest. So the Salomons, they lent money to James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, and James Wilson at no interest. Madison wrote to him multiple times acknowledging debts he had no ability to repay. Salomon never pressed them. Then came Yorktown, summer of 1781, where my ancestor Isaac Wade, in attendance, killed him some redcoats. I'm Austin Wade. That's Isaac Wade. He was there. It was the summer of 1781. Washington had trapped Cornwallis in Virginia. The French fleet was positioned outside Chesapeake Bay. The trap had been laid. The problem is that Washington's war chest was completely empty. Congress had nothing. Robert Morris told Washington there were no funds and no credit to be had anywhere, and this was the final battle. Washington's response was 4 words: Send for Haym Salomon. I mean, that is a movie line, right? That is like the 18th century version of like calling the one guy who could fix the whole disaster while everyone else is standing around holding a clipboard and panicking. Get me the Jew. We're out of money. George Washington looks around. Slow down. Get me Haym Salomon. Salomon raised 20 grand through the sale of bills of exchange, which that money then was turned around to be used to feed the army, provision the troops, kept the campaign operational through the final stage of the siege of Yorktown. The battle that ended the American Revolution was financed in a critical moment by a Polish-born Jewish immigrant who had twice been arrested by the British and once was sentenced to death. Haym Salomon died on January 6 of 1785. He was 44 years old. He died in poverty. The government owed him hundreds of thousands of dollars. The continental debt that he held was worth about 10 cents on the dollar at his death. His entire family was left penniless. His son spent years petitioning Congress for repayment. Congress endorsed the claim more than once, but the money was never appropriated. It was never paid. So yes, America won its freedom, and then Congress stiffed the guy who helped finance it. Some traditions are beautiful. Some traditions maybe should have been strangled in the crib. His obituary in the Independent Gazetteer read simply, Thursday last, expired. After a lingering illness, Mr. Haym Salomon, an eminent broker of this city, native of Poland and of the Hebrew nation. A nation got its freedom. A man gave everything he had to make it happen. And America largely forgot his name. In 1941, the week after Pearl Harbor, a bronze statue was finally dedicated in Chicago. It shows three men, George Washington in the center, Robert Morris on the left, and Haym Salomon on the right. It took America more than 150 years to say thank you, which is about average processing time for the federal government if you round down. In 1790, George Washington made a trip to Newport, Rhode Island, to acknowledge the state's ratification of the Constitution and to build support for the Bill of Rights. As was the custom, delegations from the city came out to meet Washington, and among them was Moses Seixas, who was the warden of the Hebrew congregation of Newport, which is one of the oldest Jewish communities in America. Seixas presented Washington with a letter. He thanked God that the Jews, historically deprived of the rights of free citizens, now lived under a government which to bigotry gives no sanction and to persecution no assistance. Washington wrote back, and what he wrote was a thank you note. And it wasn't like it was written by some guy who says, we're going to circle back. This was a moment of profound importance to George Washington. He took Seixas' own words, he echoed them back, and then made them the moral position of the American Republic in plain English. The government of the United States, Washington wrote, gives to bigotry no sanction and to persecution no assistance, and requires only those that live under its protection conduct themselves as good citizens. And then he closed with a line from the Hebrew scriptures in the book of Micah. He said, everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. That's not tolerance in the modern word. Washington was explicit about this. He rejected the word toleration entirely because toleration implies a gift from the powerful to the weak. Toleration says, we will allow you to exist as long as we are feeling generous. Liberty says, you already have the right and the government needs to keep its hands to itself, which is a pretty big difference. One of them is true freedom. The other one is HR with a musket. George Washington was describing a nation that recognized natural rights as pre-political. We'll talk to Judge Napolitano more about that later. These are rights that you have because you are a human being, not because the government decided that you need a permission slip. And this is the Libertarian Nationalist Foundation. Liberty is not dispensed by the state. It precedes the state. And the first president of the United States made that argument in a letter to a Jewish congregation. And this is the history that gets buried, not just because it's obscure. I mean, it's not obscure. Washington's letter to the Hebrew congregation is one of the most significant documents in American history. It's been cited in multiple Supreme Court cases. This history gets buried because it's inconvenient. An inconvenient history is usually the history that matters most, because the point here is not religious, and I think most of you know that I am not a religious man, but the point here is civilizational. America didn't come from one tradition. It came from a synthesis of traditions. Hebrew covenant law, Protestant work ethic, English constitutionalism, classical republicanism, and natural rights philosophy. These are not competing ideas. They are all reinforcing ideas. It's not a buffet where you pick one plate and you sneer at the rest. This is the recipe. It's all in there. And the Jewish community was not a passenger on that project. They were builders of that project. A man named Haym Salomon put up the money for the army that won independence. A congregation in Newport helped the first president articulate the principle of natural religious liberty in its clearest form. The Hebrew Bible gave the founders a model of Republican self-government that they reference constantly and openly, even those of them who were not Christians, even those of them who were deists, who were like me, likely secular humanists. And the reason that this all matters right now, the reason that I'm building up to an even larger conversation about Israel in the modern sense, is because the conversation about Israel in the American right has gotten very loud, very fast, and very confused. A notable anti-Semite contacted me yesterday who says, and I say that descriptively, not as pejoratively as it's normally used, but who said that, boy, you got a Jewish wife and you're all of a sudden you're talking about Israel and Jews a lot. And it's like, well, if you had done even 5 minutes, or you didn't even have to do 5 minutes. For those of you who think that I've changed, you need to go back and read my writings from 10 years ago and even more than 10 years ago, and I was saying similar things. It's just that, well, it's an issue now. And so I'll talk about it more. You've made it an issue, not me making an issue. You can't stop talking about the Jews. Now, there are legitimate questions to ask about foreign policy, about aid, about entanglement. There are serious questions that deserve serious answers. There are legitimate right-wing criticisms of Israel or even Judaism as a faith itself. I could make many of those criticisms. But what passes for criticism right now, it's not serious criticism. It's not rooted in history. It's not rooted in the libertarian tradition. And it's not coming from people who have any real interest in the strength of this American civilization. So before you can evaluate the arguments being made, you need to know what the relationship actually is. Not what the grifters say it is, not what the conspiracy retards say it is, not what some guy named Trad Patriot Anti-Zio 1776 says in a 42 post thread while using a Roman statue avatar and living off of DoorDash credits. What it actually is, and what it actually is this. From the very beginning, the American experiment and the Jewish tradition were not strangers. They were building towards many of the same ideas. Liberty grounded in law, rights that precede government, a nation built on covenant, not conquest, a people capable of self-government because they answer to something higher than the state. This is a civilization working together. And we're going to talk about what that means for where we are right now. Wake Up America, I'm Austin Peterson. This is the Wake Up America show. It's time to rise and freedom. Okay. Click the like button if you haven't already, and make sure that you click the follow button as well if today is the very first time that you've ever joined the Wake Up America show. We'd love to have you be a regular guest. Click the follow button over there underneath the video, and you'll get a notification when we go live on your Rumble app, which is 5 days a week. The Wake Up America show is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's the kind of show that you can usually just hop in, stick around for 15, 20 minutes, find out what's going on, see if you want to listen to what's going to happen later on in the show, which I promise you, it's always great. The second hour is phenomenal. We have two great guests today, Judge Andrew Napolitano and Kevin Boyd. So make sure that if you've got errands or things that you got to do this morning and you can't tune into the whole show, make sure you come back for sure in the second hour because we've got some phenomenal guests. Next year is America's 250th birthday. And you know what's going to happen, this year. This year is 250th birthday. Austin. Wake up. Of course, the left is spending this year telling us why America is evil, why America was truly founded in 1619 when the first slave was bred here, blah, 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 blah. Oh, Misha Swisky, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. I love history so damn much. I love history. Even when it makes me uncomfortable, even when it bothers me, even when history seems to go against what it is that I believe. Oh God, I was having like an existential crisis the other day on the airplane as I was reading some parts of history, and it didn't sit. It tore me open like halfway. I was reading some history and I was reading some philosophy. And I just was saying to myself, oh God, this is terribly inconvenient for what I believe. And it's scary. And I'm like, cognitive dissonance. I have to change my mind on some things. But I just love history so much because history doesn't care. History doesn't care what you think. History is history no matter what. History happened. History is real. History is alive because we are alive. But the American Revolution was more than just a problematic group project with muskets. No, the 250th of the anniversary of the United States is something deeply special to me personally, and I can imagine that for the people who are watching us over Rumble right now, that the American Revolution is something that sits with you very deeply as well. I bring this off to show this off, not because it necessarily says anything about me personally, because, of course, every person has to make their own way in the world. But here I am sitting very proudly holding up an image from the National Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. And I am so proud to represent my patriot ancestor, Isaac Wade. And I only found out last year that that I had a patriot ancestor and that my middle name, Austin Wade Peterson, was a family name going all the way back to before the United States was founded. There were Wades here in the United States. And Isaac Wade fought in the American Revolution. He fought in the militia, the organized militia. And boy, if I thought I was patriotic before, now here I've never felt more patriotic in my life. I've always loved the American Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Founding Fathers, and I've always loved this country, and I won't apologize for it. I was right the first time on that, at least. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was right about the Founding Fathers and about America. I would never bet against America. So if the Founding Fathers, I'm the man who took a group of people to Washington, D.C. And was this flag, and was told by the guards in the Smithsonian Museum for American History that I would have to furl my flag because this flag could be considered offensive to some people in there. I kid you not. That happened. Boo, good, boo, hiss. But I waited for my moment. I did my little sneaky report them to their. I reported the guards who told me to do that to the authorities. I literally called the White House, and the White House responded and said, "Well, we're going to reform the Smithsonian." So this little flag right here in your hands helped shape American history. And I helped. So I love this country, and I know that you do too, and I'm always proud to wear merchandise that's got the American flag on it. I know it seems trite or boring to some people, but I don't care. I've always wanted to have my own store and sell stuff that I love, and that's what we make at forlibertyshop.com. When you go to forlibertyshop.com, it's not just an ordinary merchandise website. It's really not. It is special. We are literally the best patriotic merchandise store in the world. There is no one better. Not Hobby Lobby, not that Trump shop at the Lake of the Ozarks at Bagnell Dam. We're better. Quest Fanning says, Sons of the American Revolution own and operate historic Francis Tavern and Museum in Lower Manhattan. Let's grab lunch. Yes! I'm in. So do yourself a favor. Do us a favor. Be like a little Haym Salomon. Help us to finance the revolution. Come on. We got any Haym Salomons out there? Keep calm and declare independence. When you go to forlibertyshop.com this morning, guys, you can rest assured, feel good that the money that you spend here will go to a good cause. We will turn around and we will finance patriotic projects here at the For Liberty Network. We're different. We're special. In a world of grifters, the For Liberty Network exists as a true, principled activist foundation. We are a group of people who are descended from the bloodline of true patriots who fought for this country. So head to forlibertyshop.com. Check out the 250th anniversary. Every purchase that you make during this live show will go to unlock a bonus mini documentary. And that mini documentary will be about another hero from the American Revolution that you might not have heard of, Misha. So head over there, get yourself some Founding Fathers coffee with Thomas Jefferson's face on it, and we'll learn a little bit more about history. Okay, so before we actually get into what's happening on the right now, let's do something radical in modern politics. We're going to be fair with the other side before we hit it with a chair. So I'm going to give... Wait, no. We're going to be fair. Yeah, we're going to give the strongest version of the legitimate case against American Israel policy because it exists. And if you're going to dismiss it, you should have to dismiss the best version of it, in my mind. Not the cartoon version made out of 3 podcast clips and attacking a guy named Truth Seeker 1488 with a Roman statue avatar who won't fight back. So here it is. The honest critique starts with foreign aid. Israel receives roughly $3.8 billion per year of taxpayer money in U.S. military assistance. Now, that is a number that a constitutionalist, a libertarian nationalist, can and should scrutinize. The libertarian argument is simple. The U.S. Congress is supposed to appropriate funds for the national defense of the United States. Transferring that wealth to a foreign government, even a friendly one, even an allied one, is not obviously consistent with that mandate. And that is a real argument. The second honest critique is about strategic entanglement, right? The concern is that permanent alliance commitments could pull the United States into conflicts that it might not otherwise enter, that the tail wags the dog, and that American servicemen die for interests that are not primarily American interests. That's also a real argument, and it has been made seriously by people who are not anti-Semites and are not conspiracy theorists. The third honest critique involves AIPAC and foreign lobbying influence in American elections more broadly. That critique applies to every foreign-linked lobbying apparatus, from Saudi money and think tanks, Chinese investment in universities, to whatever Qatar is doing and with half of our elite institutions while everybody's pretending not to notice because the check cleared. Right? If you're concerned about foreign influence in American politics, great. Apply that standard everywhere, not selectively, not only when the foreigners have a synagogue. Right? These are the arguments that deserve a serious response because a libertarian nationalist can make those arguments in good faith, and we're going to answer them. But here's the problem. Right? That's not the argument that's dominating the conversation right now. The argument dominating the conversation right now is not about foreign aid appropriations or lobbying reform. It's about bloodlines, secret councils, shadowy puppet masters, right? And a forged document from 1903 that somehow keeps getting passed around like it was found in the back of the National Treasure Map. And we need to talk about where that document came from, who spread it, and what it actually produced, because the people who do not understand that history are currently being used by people who absolutely do understand that history. In 1903, a Russian newspaper called The Banner began publishing a document that claimed to be the recorded minutes of a secret council of Jewish elders outlining a global conspiracy to dominate the world. The document was called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Within 2 years, it was exposed as a forgery, and that was not disputed. It wasn't like fact checkers say kind of exposure, right? A British journalist named Philip Graves published a detailed investigation in the Times of London in 1921, proving that the protocols were plagiarized almost word for word from an 1864 political satire about Napoleon III. Not Jews. It wasn't about Jews. It was about Napoleon III and his global conspiracy to control the world, right? So, I mean, that's important, right? If your world-ending conspiracy document started as a French roast of a guy with a mustache, maybe pump the brakes before making it your whole personality. The Russian secret police, the Okhrana, had taken Maurice Joly's work. They replaced Napoleon with the Elders of Zion and then manufactured a conspiracy document to redirect popular anger towards Jews and away from the Tsar. The Tsar was getting quite unpopular at that time. So that was the origin. It was a fabricated political hit job by a collapsing empire trying to find a scapegoat for its own failures. Now, this wasn't a secret. It was in the newspapers. The forgery was documented, and then it was reported on at that time. Right? And in 1920, a year before Graves published his definitive proof, a man named Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, most famous businessman in America, he had a genuine populist credibility, and he had genuine concerns about industrial finance and about questions of globalism. He bought a newspaper called the Dearborn Independent and began running a 91-part series called The International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. Now, the series was based directly on those plagiarized protocols, Napoleon III. At its peak, the Dearborn Independent had a circulation of about 900,000 people. Ford distributed through every Ford dealership in the country. Buying a Model T came with the free side of industrial-scale antisemitism. He published the articles as a book. He translated it into 16 languages, including German. By 1922, it was in its 21st printing in Germany. Adolf Hitler read it. Hitler praised Henry Ford by name and Mein Kampf as the only American he admired. Hated the rest of us. And he, of course, for his stance on Jewish financiers. Didn't mention Haym Salomon once. Hitler kept a portrait of Ford on his wall. There was a medal, I think, that they gave for Henry Ford that he never accepted. The Nazi regime gave Henry Ford the Grand Cross of the German Eagle in 1938, I think. This is their highest civilian honor for foreigners, 2 years after the Berlin Olympics. So by then, the protocols had become the ideological backbone of the Holocaust, right? This was the backbone, the piece that was attacking Napoleon III, and then was, it's the Jews, actually, not Napoleon III. That was the backbone for the entire Holocaust. Ford eventually issued a retraction in 1927 under legal pressure from a libel lawsuit. He called the protocols forgeries and said that he was mortified. Someone else wrote that for him, we're told. Then in classic, "I'm sorry you caught me" fashion, he later told people his signature on the retraction had been forged and that Jewish bankers had caused World War II. Oh, Henry. Well, so the protocols it's not a historical artifact. It's a living document. It's still being shared. It's still being cited. It's still the same intellectual poison in different packaging every single time that it resurfaces. And every single time that it resurfaces, it follows the same pattern. Legitimate frustration about financial elites, institutional power, and government corruption gets redirected towards Jews as the singular explanation for everything that has gone wrong. It's the theory of life, the universe, and everything. At the center, Jews, 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 Jews. Right? The document itself, these protocols, which have spread this cancer, it's a conspiracy against the people reading it. You're not being enlightened. You are being managed. The question is, by whom? And we're going to get into that. In 2008, I joined the Ron Paul revolution, getting active in politics for the first time because I was inspired by the message of a Texas gynecologist who delivered hundreds of babies, and Dr. Ron Paul cured my apathy. And it needs to be said that Ron Paul built something very real. We shouldn't pretend that the man was useless or that the liberty movement that was, hatched out of this podcast studio in 2021, right? The modern American liberty movement, the one that produced a generation of constitutionalists, Austrian economics readers, anti-interventionists who have coherent foreign policy arguments, Federal Reserve skeptics, civil libertarians, and people who could explain monetary policy at a bar until everyone else left. All of that movement grew largely out of Ron Paul's 2008 presidential campaign. And for that, I am grateful. He was right about the Federal Reserve. He was right about endless wars. He was right about executive overreach, civil liberties, and the military-industrial complex operating without meaningful democratic accountability. Ron Paul earned his credibility. And then he let it get used. In the 1990s, newsletters published under Ron Paul's name, including the Ron Paul Political Report and the Ron Paul Survival Report, ran content that was, well, let's just say it caused half of the staff at my Ron Paul headquarters in 2008 to march right out and never return to the liberty movement. This was all happening beneath the movement that he was building. Now, Paul at the time denied writing it, and he pointed to ghostwriters, but never specifically named a person as responsible. 3 people with direct knowledge of his business operations, including a former secretary, told the Washington Post Paul proofed and signed off on the newsletters. Now, that's never been cleanly resolved, but the newsletter controversy, it's old news. It's not the main issue today. The main issue today with the Ron Paul movement is that Ron Paul has appointed a man to head his foreign policy think tank by the name of Daniel McAdams. McAdams is the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity and the regular co-host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Think Grima Wormtongue. He's described himself as a traditionalist, a Roman, a Habsburgian, not a libertarian. It's a lot of words to say. I have strong opinions about empires that collapsed before my great-grandparents had a phone. In October of 2024, McAdams shared a post from an anti-Israel account that dehumanized young Israeli female soldiers with the phrase, "What is wrong with these people?" quote, scare quotes around people, accompanied by a TikTok dance video. Of course, McAdams quote posted it with his own sarcastic editorial suggesting the women deserved to be killed in a Hezbollah attack. When challenged on this, he accused his critic of being a paid Israeli propagandist and told him to go to hell. Nothing says principled non-interventionists like cheering death and then doing customer service for damnation. When a libertarian economist named Walter Block publicly challenged McAdams and Ron Paul to debate Israel policy, citing his years on the Ron Paul Advisory Board, McAdams expelled him from the board and didn't respond to his letters. The same McAdams who defends Belarusian strongman Alexander Lukashenko's authoritarianism, his square quotes, while calling himself not a libertarian. The same McAdams who defended Hugo Chavez's successor in Venezuela against what he called an American-backed color revolution. See, it's not non-interventionism. Non-intervention itself would be a foreign policy position. These people are interventionists, but on the other side. What McAdams represents is something very different. It's a reflexive anti-Americanism that finds common cause with every authoritarian adversary that the United States faces, so long as the adversary is also hostile to Israel. That's not libertarianism. That's the internationalism of resentment. And it's been allowed to operate inside the Ron Paul brand for long enough that it has become synonymous with it. Ron Paul is not an anti-Semite from anything that I have seen or read directly from his own words, but he has provided institutional legitimacy and a platform to people who are operating in that space for years. And in politics, whether you like it or not, associations are your endorsements unless you actively repudiate them, and Ron Paul has not actively repudiated them. Here's what Data Republican documented on X. This is from December of 2025. She cited a forensic analysis from a group called the Network Contagion Research Institute. Nick Fuentes' sudden surge in relevance on X, the ratio of Elon Musk, the mainstream press coverage, the New York Times interviews, right, the framing as a rising figure of the new right, that was not organic. 61% of all of Fuentes' retweets in the first 30 minutes of his posts came from accounts engaged in coordinated boosting behavior, doing it repeatedly across multiple posts. Now, 92% of those accounts, 92% were fully anonymous. No name, no photo, no location, no contact information. It's always a great sign when someone claims to represent the real American people while operating like a customer service bot for a crypto scam from India. Well, that's what it was. Most of these were single-purpose Groyper accounts whose only function was amplifying Fuentes. His most viral posts were heavily retweeted by accounts from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Malaysia, and Indonesia. These are countries with no organic connection to American identity politics whatsoever. The rise, of course, as Data Republican colluded, was not organic. The agenda is not America first. Fuentes himself, while branding everything he does as America first, has repeatedly sided with Iran, Russia, and China in media appearances, including on state-controlled media during active crisis involving U.S. forces. That's not isolationism. That's not even non-interventionism. That is someone who hates America and then got a red, white, and blue Halloween costume to wear inside the American right. Even now, Fuentes describes himself as a moderate Democrat who hates Jews. Interesting. Look what the Broader Influence Project actually produced. Tucker Carlson, a man who had a genuine audience and genuine credibility, went on camera, compared Benjamin Netanyahu to Hitler, called him the main enemy of Western civilization, flirts with Holocaust deniers. Candace Owens, who taught Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring at the Daily Wire a real up-close and personal lesson on the danger of DEI hires, spent her remaining credibility claiming AIPAC orchestrated the Kennedy assassination, and that Judaism is a pedophile-centric religion that believes in child sacrifice. Right? So those aren't really policy critiques, right? Those aren't right-wing criticisms of Israel or the Jews. That's just the protocols of the elders of Zion with a ring light. And the Groypers and the broader Jew-Spurger operation, the people who bought Tucker, bought Candace, peddled their Rome slop to the masses, ran this entire project until the America First United meeting last week, where Michael Rechtenwald, the Mises Caucus, you know, the Ron Paul libertarians in the Libertarian Party, the Mises Caucus pick, Michael Rechtenwald, was in attendance at America First United, that event where they said, down with the Jews, now let's lead Abdul Muhammad al-Jihad, our leaders. Yes, Michael Rechtenwald from the Ron Paul Libertarian movement was in attendance. You can see his little bald head right there alongside Nick Fuentes' followers. He posted to X that the Jewish elite must be physically removed. This is the allegedly former Marxist professor who the Ron Paul Libertarians decided to run, who ate a weed gummy before his presidential speech before the Libertarian Party, and then he spazzed out, slurring his words before running off stage. He was so stoned, so high on drugs, that he could no longer speak. This was the best that the anti-Israel Ron Paul libertarians in the LP could muster. Fucking pathetic. The right-wing influence project that was supposed to make anti-Semitism respectable inside the liberty movement ended with Michael Rechtenwald sharing a stage at America First United with the least libertarian people in American politics. The horseshoe theory completed itself in real time. The people who were trying to destroy right-wing support for Israel by infiltrating the right ended up destroying their own infiltration operation by making it too obvious to ignore. Trusting the plan, sticking with Donald Trump was the right move, as we saw in the elections last night. Congratulations, Vivek Ramaswamy. Maybe if the Ron Paul libertarians in the LP were less high, they could have gotten Rechtenwald across the finish line. Or maybe they could have stopped Vivek Ramaswamy from trouncing their Groyper candidate in Ohio. Oh, sad. You fools. This morning, we spent this morning talking about the story of Haym Salomon, a Polish Jewish immigrant who joined the Sons of Liberty in 1775, was arrested twice by the British, sentenced to death, and escaped, and then spent the rest of his short life converting foreign loans into hard currency so George Washington could keep his army fed, clothed, and in the field. Haym Salomon, that Jewish financier, raised the 20 grand that financed the siege of Yorktown, where my ancestor Isaac Wade killed British like it was going out of style. Thank you, Isaac. Haym Salomon, Jewish, personally lent money at no interest to James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, and James Wilson. That money was never repaid. Apparently, stiffing the guy who saved the revolution was Congress's first real bipartisan accomplishment. Haym Salomon died at 44, broke, his family penniless. We talked about George Washington's 1790 letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, where the first president of the United States looked at the Jewish community and said, "The government gives to bigotry no sanction, to prosecution no assistance." He quoted the book of Micah. He was not being diplomatic. He was describing the foundational architecture. The reason that the Libertarian nationalist case for Israel is not the neocon case, not the evangelical end times case, and not the AIPAC donor case is because it is grounded in something that precedes all of those things. It's grounded in the fact that Israel and America are the two most significant experiments in self-governance in the history of the Western world, and they share the same civilizational DNA. Natural law, covenant before conquest, rights that precede government, a nation built not merely on blood or soil, but on an idea of what human beings deserve by virtue of being human. That is the Hebrew Republic. That is the American Republic. The people running the foreign amplified anti-Semitism operation on the American right are not America First. They're not even coherently anti-war. They are agents, knowingly or not, of adversarial powers who understand that the alliance between Israel and America is one of the foundational load-bearing walls of the Western order. Knock it out and the whole structure gets weaker. Henry Ford gave Hitler a template in 1920. The protocols were a forgery then, they're a forgery now. Every version of the same argument, whether it comes out of the Dearborn Independent, the Ron Paul Institute's comment section, a Groyper account boosted from Pakistan, or Tucker Carlson's podcast, is the same operation with updated branding. It's not, "I'm just asking questions." It's just a 121-year-old Russian forgery for Russian peasants working its same magic on the peasant class today. The liberty movement has legitimate policy arguments to make about Israel, about foreign aid, about lobbying, about strategic entanglement. Those arguments should be made and answered honestly. But there's a difference between a constitutionalist making a foreign policy argument and someone running a century-old Russian forgery through a right-wing podcast. One is American, the other is not. Civilization is a team sport, and the team you're actually on is the question worth asking right now. Wake up, America, rise and freedom. Now, everybody laughs at the guy who builds the lifeboat until the ship starts making weird noises. And I'm not saying America's the Titanic, right? I'm just saying the band has been playing for a long time. The crew looks confused, and the captain keeps asking Congress for another $1 trillion. So that is why some people need a plan B. And I'm proud to work with our friends at expatmoney.com. My friend Todd fled to Panama. I'm staying in the United States and planting my flag here. I'll be sticking with America, thank you. But I don't begrudge my friends. It may even be possible that my good friend John McAfee staged his suicide at the Catalan prison, escaped across the ocean, and made it back. I like to believe that he's back in Belize. Oh, John. My good friend John McAfee. You don't need to be running from the law. You don't even need to be a crypto millionaire, billionaire like he was. Expat Money helps you think through what it means to protect your family if you're a regular family beyond one banking system, one currency, one government. If you think that the United States system is controlled, why don't you just diversify your money with expatmoney.com? Go to expatmoney.com/Austin. Help to finance the next phase of the revolution. And if you're wondering if people always accuse me of like doing this to get rich or because it's going to help. I'm getting $7,000 from Israel for these posts, which, I mean, look at my audience size and look at the money. You can see it. They're on Rumble. Telling the truth isn't popular. Telling the lies absolutely are. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Trump DOJ indicted James Comey over a photo of seashells? I'm not sure. The judge is really hot on this topic. Let's ask him about the Jews, though. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show, and you're watching the For Liberty Network. Don't forget to go to forlibertyshop.com. Looks like we're halfway to the bonus, guys. Let's go. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
Thanks for sticking around. I'm Austin Peterson. This is the Wake Up America Show. My next guest joins us live every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Central, and he's done so for the last 3 years since we started this show. We're so grateful to have one of the brightest minds for liberty in the United States. Former New Jersey Superior Court judge, constitutional scholar, Judge Napolitano. The Trump DOJ has indicted James Comey for posting a photo of seashells arranged as the number 8647 on Instagram. Judge Napolitano's column lays out exactly why the case against Comey is constitutionally dead on arrival. Judge, great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Austin. It's always a pleasure, my dear friend.
Judge, thanks for joining us. And tell us the facts cold for the audience. So James Comey, former FBI director, posts this photo of seashells on a beach arranged in the numbers 8647. And so the DOJ's theory is that 47 means Trump and 86 means kill him. So the Secret Service contacts them, and then they closed it, and then a real assassination attempt happens, and now 2 days later, the DOJ takes this to a grand jury. So what's actually going on, Judge?
Correct. Well, what's going on is Donald Trump's perfectly understandable animosity toward Comey, who made Trump's life miserable prior to his presidency in 2016, when Comey was part of a cabal to ruin Donald Trump. So Trump's animosity towards Comey is well documented and understandable, but that does not give him license to use the Department of Justice to prosecute a non-crime. How can it possibly be a crime to take a photograph? Actually, he didn't even take the photograph. Somebody sent it to him, to post a photograph of seashells on a beach that did not result in any incitement. You know, if any language claimed to be criminal is ambiguous, and if the ambiguous language has a non-criminal interpretation to it, the courts are required to apply the non-criminal interpretation. Why? Because of the primacy of the freedom of speech in our society. So all speech is presumed to be lawful. So if there are other meanings to 8647, like it's time for his presidency to end, that is not a crime to make a statement like that. That can be calling for impeachment or calling for the Democrats to control Congress. As long as there's a non-criminal interpretation to the speech alone cannot form the basis of the prosecution. Now I'm saying speech under First Amendment jurisdiction or jurisprudence. Posting something, even though you didn't actually speak the words, posting something is considered speech for First Amendment purposes. I came across an interesting case where in 1966, a young man, he was young then, he's my age now, was drafted and condemned the draft and said, as soon as they put a rifle in my hand, the first person in my crosshairs will be LBJ, who was the president at the time. Now, this guy was prosecuted and convicted for threatening to murder the President of the United States. The Supreme Court unanimously reversed that conviction, saying it was just hyperbolic speech, it's protected speech, it didn't incite anybody to do anything, and he didn't have the present apparent ability to do it. It's not like LBJ was right there. Same principle with Comey.
Now, Judge, I used to work in the restaurant industry before I met you, as I worked my way up after college. And when we said 86 something, that meant that we would nix it. So you'd take it off the menu. So your argument, your argument is that if you say something that could be interpreted as anything else, then that is free speech. But what if it could not be interpreted as something else? Like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a Godfather reference here. Like, you know, leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Suppose he said it's time to kill the president. Suppose he had said that. That, too, is protected speech unless it immediately incites someone to take an attempt on the president's life. That's the Brandenburg case, where Mr. Brandenburg, a KKK person, called for violence against blacks and Jewish people, but no violence occurred, and there was time for more speech to rebut it. So even direct threat without the present apparent ability to carry it out and without immediate, keyword, immediate incitement is protected. The reason immediate is part of this is because if there is time for more speech to neutralize the offending speech, as there was in the Brandenburg case, then the speech is protected.
So obviously, the Secret Service can't make time to visit every person who says specifically, though, we should kill the president. And there's, otherwise they would, be every crackhead on the street would get a visit from the Secret Service. But is it wise, probably from a policy perspective, for the Secret Service to visit people of interest who might have the capability to actually carry it out? I mean, there have been.
Well, that's their job. They did visit him by telephone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember, they're not a prosecutorial agency.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI did not visit him. The DOJ did not visit him. The Secret Service visited him. They're in the Department of Homeland Security, and they concluded there's no there. He's not a threat to anybody. He's just pissed off, excuse the language, at the president.
I love it when you use strong language, actually, Judge. It makes you just seem stronger, like a man. This free speech conversation is important, Judge, because I think a lot of people really don't understand what you can say or can't say. There is what is legal now, which may not perfectly go along with your definition. I would guess that regardless of whether or not what you say is true, that if someone were to say, let's kill the president, that would probably be actionable under current law at the moment, wouldn't it?
No, unless somebody responded to it immediately, or unless you had the present apparent ability to do it. I mean, if the president were in the same room with you and you just said, let's kill the president, that absolutely would be actionable because there's no time, key word here, for somebody to say, well, what are you, crazy? You can't do that. There's no time if the president is right there. That's the LBJ case. LBJ was not there. If LBJ had been in the room with this kid when he said this, then the prosecution would have succeeded.
I'm speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano this morning a little bit about the case against James Comey, who posted on his Instagram account in seashells, arranging them to say 8647. Now, Comey, is he off the hook now, or what is the next step in this case?
Oh, no, he's not off the hook now. He's been indicted and booked. And, the federal judge released him on his own recognizance, meaning no bail whatsoever. The next step is for his lawyers to move to dismiss the case on First Amendment grounds. Now, over the weekend, Todd Blanche, who's the Deputy Attorney General of the United States and is competing against our former colleague, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, who has nothing to do with this case, or Trump's heart and appointment to become Attorney General of the United States. Mr. Blanche told reporters on the Sunday morning talk shows, they have more evidence that they can't reveal. Well, that's hogwash. If they have evidence beyond the 8647, which points to criminal behavior, they are required to put it in the indictment, and they have not. So I don't know how he can have evidence he can't reveal. The reason I tell you that is because once Comey's people move to dismiss the indictment on First Amendment grounds, the government's going to have to come up with everything they have. If they don't, it'll be dismissed, and it'll be too little too late if they have something that they hold back. Now, I don't know what they could possibly have, but it'll soon be time for them to put up or shut up.
There is a lot of case history on this one. Brandenburg versus Ohio. Incitement to violence is a separate and even higher bar. The speech advocating illegal action, including assassination, is protected unless it is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, as you've said, and is likely to incite or produce such action. Wow. I really think most people probably think that if you say, we should kill the president or you should kill the president, they probably think that in itself is illegal, but it's not.
No, it is not illegal. Now, there could be consequences to it. Your employer could fire you if the employer's good or service, whatever the employer sells, is damaged by having somebody who works there say it, but you can't be prosecuted for just those words. No.
Interesting. Okay, Judge Andrew Napolitano on the James Comey case. Judge, it's been a wild several weeks in the news. There's so many big stories that we have to cover. What else are you covering on your show, Judging Freedom?
Well, we're covering the latest in Iran. it's hard to get a straight answer out of the administration. Their mantra now appears to be to declare victory and go home, because our former colleague, who calls himself the Secretary of War, has become a national laughingstock. Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the war is over. And Secretary of State, not really Secretary of State, he's the Secretary of State de jure, but not de facto. He doesn't get to participate in any negotiations with foreign leaders. Marco Rubio said the same thing. The war is over, we won. So that apparently is their mantra now. The United States grossly underestimated the collective will and the collective strength of Iran. We are learning this morning that the damage Iran caused to U.S. bases in the Gulf and to Israel was far greater than what the U.S. and the Israelis have revealed. And this, of course, is giving the Trump administration second thoughts about whether or not they should commence new acts of violence. They're under great pressure from Mrs. Adelson and her colleagues, and also from Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government to recommence violence. The president wants to go and visit President Xi in China at the end of next week. He can't really do that if the war is still going, and he can do it, but it would be most impolitic for him to make an international trip of that magnitude while the war is going on. So who controls the Strait of Hormuz? Well, Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth say it's international waters. It's not. Under the law, countries claim 12 miles, actually 12 and a half miles out. So the strait is about 24 miles wide. It's half Iran and half Oman. The United States has no legal authority to be there. Right now, it's open for ships that Iran permits and ships that pay Iran's toll, which it has a right to do, just like the U.S. could impose a toll on a ship that came within 12 and a half miles of Key West. So the blockade has not worked. The bombing has not achieved any of Trump's goals: regime change, capture of or destruction of the nuclear-enriched material, degrading or destroying Iran's nuclear weapons. And now this newest goal, which didn't exist at the outset, because at the outset the strait was open, opening up the Strait of Hormuz. None of these goals has been achieved by this war. They attempted to steal the nuclear material, but it was a disaster, and they ended up turning it into a rescue mission of the two pilots that were shot down.
Judge,
so that's what my guys are talking about. My next guest, as soon as I finish with you, is Mohammed Marandi. Very interesting person, born in Alexandria, Virginia, but a professor of literature at the University of Tehran, part of the negotiating team that went to Islamabad. I speak with him once a week, who fills us in on what the Iranian people think and what the Iranian government thinks. He's also a personal friend of mine who speaks English like you and I do, since he's born here.
Judge Napolitano, his show Judging Freedom can be downloaded on any of your mobile devices. Get them wherever you get your podcasts. Judge, one last question, a deep philosophical question. We call this big brain time. So I'm about to go about 3 or 4 layers deep into political philosophy. But one of the things that I've been struggling with is this concept of globalism, internationalism versus, say, nationalism, and like the conflict between these concepts, where if we believe that individuals have individual rights, you believe they're granted by God, and that those rights are pre-political, meaning that they exist outside of the bounds of the nation state. Well, in some ways, that's kind of a universalist belief in liberty, right? That we don't get our rights because we're Americans, but that those rights are endowed to us from our Creator. So then how does that sort of get how would you say the word I'm looking for, like adjudicated, if you will, without becoming policemen of the world, without becoming international globalists like the UN and the World Economic Forum, et cetera, et cetera. If we believe in liberty as a universal individual right, how can we enforce that without a nation state? And shouldn't the nation state itself be dedicated to protecting the liberty of its own citizens, not the liberty of foreigners? We can't defend the Second Amendment rights of people in Ghana, but internationalists and globalists suggest that we should. So how do we sort of like reconcile these tensions of the question of what rights we have versus how we can actually protect those rights?
Well, the government's obligation is to protect the rights of people who are here, not the rights of people who are elsewhere. But if somebody from Ghana comes to the United States, they have the same First Amendment and Second Amendment rights as somebody who was born here, because the language in the Constitution is persons, not citizens. But I've never heard of an argument that would suggest that the American government has the obligation to protect the human rights of somebody in another country. That's the neocon argument that we will spread democracy and spread American goodness, even though we're really killing people in other countries. If you go back to Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, he says the purpose of government is to secure our rights to life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness. Property is a little troublesome in that venue because of slavery at the time. But if you take slavery out of this, it's obvious what Jefferson was talking about. You know, I saw the musical 1776 over the weekend. And the theory of the authors is, and I've never seen this before, and I've studied the Declaration of Independence till I'm blue in the face, was that Jefferson wanted a clause in there outlawing slavery. I've never seen that in all the studies that I've done of the Declaration of Independence. I know his use of the word property was changed to pursuit of happiness so as not to make the Declaration appear hypocritical, since at the time half the country owned slaves. But if you believe, as I do, that our rights come from our humanity, whether you think it comes from our humanity because we are the highest rational beings on the planet, or comes from our humanity as a gift from God the Father, who made us perfectly free as he is perfectly free, whichever source you believe, you can accept the idea that our rights are personal to individuals, that individuals are sovereign. It gets under my skin when I hear the government referred to as sovereign. The government is only what the governed allow it to be and consent to it. The individuals are sovereign under natural law theory. But I've never heard of any government claiming that it can protect the natural rights of people in other countries. The United States does try to protect the rights of Americans being prosecuted in other countries by claiming they should have the same rights there that they have here, but it really rarely goes beyond just that claim.
Yeah. Jefferson didn't try and free the slaves. You were correct there, Judge, in the Declaration of Independence, but he wrote a strong passage condemning the transatlantic slave trade as immoral.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I wrote a chapter in one of my books about, the book is called Dred Scott's Revenge, A History of Race and Freedom in America, and one of the chapters is called Thomas Jefferson. So I'm quite familiar with Jefferson on slavery. I mean, he's an American sphinx because he was hard to figure out exactly what he thought. You know, his concubine was one of his slaves, and he had many children with her. He freed all of his slaves in his will. He did not free them when he was living. He had over 600 of them. Even though he was perpetually in debt, he lived a luxurious life because he had these 600 slaves. It's troublesome to those of us that admire the Declaration of Independence and his many famous one-liners about freedom. My favorite of which is, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty.
That quote hangs above my staircase at my home. Judge Andrew Napolitano.
and your wife sees it.
And she's the one who put it there. Judge, appreciate you very much. You have a wonderful day, Judge. We'll see you again next week.
All the best to you, Austin.
In his rough draft in June of 1776, Jefferson included this 168-word paragraph as one of his grievances against the king. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. This piratical warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare of the Christian king of Great Britain, determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold. He has prostituted his negative for suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or to restrain this execrable commerce. And that this assemblage of horrors might want no fact of distinguished dye, he is now exciting those very people to rise in arms against us, and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them by murdering the people on whom he also obtruded them, thus paying off former crimes committed against the liberties of one people with crimes which he urges them to commit against the lives of another. He was later stricken from the Declaration. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, a writer who's been in the liberty movement long enough to have real opinions about it read my Libertarian manifesto. He saw the victories of Vivek Ramaswamy last night. Kevin Boyd will join me on the other side of the break. Don't go away. Go to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Make your purchases, buy your Founding Flavors coffee. Make Madison proud. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
In a city where businesses never
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back, with sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than
well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian.
It always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States.
So what is the alternative? Well, not everybody's going to like this. But in November, there's going to be two candidates that can win on the ballot in Ohio. And it is Acton on the Democrat side and Ramaswamy on the Republican side. If it can't be Ramaswamy, I think you know what it has to be.
Oh.
And so I'm going to be calling on everybody to be going to Ohio, and we're going to give people a choice. You have an option. Stay home. But I think if you really want to make a difference and help, we're going to have to hold our noses. And we're going to have to vote Democrat.
Oh, really? Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. Kevin, do you have something to say already before I introduce you? Go ahead.
Amy Acton might be the first Jew Nick Fuentes likes.
So he doesn't. So he hates Vivek Ramaswamy more than he hates Jewish people. Okay, good to know. There's an order of hates. Yeah. There's an order of hates. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Kevin Boyd is a writer who's been in the liberty movement long enough to have real strong opinions. He wrote a response to my Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto the other day, so we booked him. But major breaking news in the liberty world demands that we talk about a couple of major news items, including Vivek Ramaswamy winning the Republican primary against the Groyper candidate, and also the fact that Jeremy Kauffman, the chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, announced that he's running for chair of the LP to abolish the Libertarian Party. So, big news items. As much as I'd love to just self-fillet and talk about the Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto, we'll put that a little bit later so we can talk about things that really super matter. Talk to me, Kevin, about the results last night out of Ohio, because Vivek Ramaswamy is so divisive in the Republican Party today that these America Firsters made it a campaign. They ran a candidate against him. The Groypers tried to destroy him. And Vivek turned around and dominated their candidate with, I think, almost 80% of the vote. To what do we attribute this success?
80% of the vote, 80% of the vote, won every county. So the Groypers took a big L last night. Good. A lot of this is going to be Vivek had the name recognition, and a lot of this is a lot of the Groyper attacks on Vivek were basically that he's Indian, which is not going to play well, even in Ohio. But I mean, you could debate Vivek's position on immigration, H-1B visas. That's fine, but they were attacking Vivek because he was Indian, which is ridiculous. And then a lot of this is also Vivek had Trump's endorsement, and he had the backing of the Ohio Republican Party. So Vivek dominating the Groypers was not really a surprise. The fact that he got 80% is pretty impressive. Now we're going to see in November if the Groypers keep their word and go into Ohio to back the first Jewish person they like. So an Amy Acton. So my guess is if it would take something catastrophic for Vivek not to be the next governor of Ohio. So I'm thinking that I think Vivek's probably the next governor of Ohio, and I think the Groypers are going to fall flat and they're going to fall on their faces again in November, and that's a good thing.
A lot of people don't know, but the reason, or at least I won't say the entire reason, but I was inspired by Vivek Ramaswamy, who described himself as a libertarian nationalist. I was inspired to write my Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto specifically because when he was running for president, I liked his policies. I thought that he had good liberty-centric policies. Not everything was perfect, and I disagree with things here and there. But when he described himself as a libertarian nationalist, it shocked me. And I was like, I've never heard that term before. And I was like, I kind of like that. I think that's sort of where I'm at. That's the lane that I am in. And so I wrote my first iteration of the Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto 2 years ago. I wrote a second version of it that came out last year. But all of that started because of how Vivek Ramaswamy described his views, which were so similar to mine. And so I've supported him this entire time, even through all the hate and derision that he's received, because I believe that that if you want the liberty movement to carry forward, Vivek Ramaswamy is as good a messenger as anybody else. He's also the second self-described libertarian nationalist to win their statewide primary this year, but we can talk about that later. Let's talk about the Libertarian Party itself, Kevin, because Jeremy Kauffman, who I was with last week in New Hampshire talking about all this stuff, has announced that he's going to run for chair of the Libertarian Party for the express purpose of shutting it down. Is it A, good idea, or B, great idea?
B, great idea.
Yeah.
Let me back it up. Let me back up here for a second. The United States, for better or worse, is a two-party system. Just the way it's set up. Third parties are generally not going to accomplish anything unless one of the other major parties falls apart. That's the history of American politics. The Republican Party started out as a third party, but it became the second party after the Whig Party fell apart over the issue of fell apart. And if you look at the Libertarian Party's results, if you believe in free market capitalism and you take a cost benefit analysis, the Libertarian Party has not accomplished a whole lot. It has not moved America towards a more freer society. It has not. Libertarians have generally failed to get elected. Their only member of Congress was Justin Amash, who switched parties as a Republican and did not even bother running for re-election. They have not elected a senator. Their best presidential performance was Gary Johnson, who was the former Republican governor of New Mexico, who ran against two of the most hated people ever to run for president in Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in 2016, and only managed to get 3% of the vote. 2024, they nominated and ran Chase Oliver. Chase Oliver did so poorly that he lost not only to Jill Stein in the Greens, who are basically a joke, but lost to RFK Jr., who dropped out of the presidential race months earlier. So, with all due respect to my Libertarian Party friends, and believe it or not, I still got some. I have some. The Libertarian Party has not accomplished anything. You're basically throwing good money after bad. It's become a joke. It's become a navel-gazing society. They have no path forward. So yeah, shut it down.
Completely
Shut
agree.
it down, do something else.
Completely agree. I'm speaking to Kevin Boyd. I think that it's one thing to have a conversation about how the Libertarian Party as a brand is damaging the ideas of libertarianism as a whole, which I do agree with. But then it is another question of practicality when it comes to where we're spending our money and our time. I mean, I spent 10 years with that within the Libertarian Party, working at its highest levels at the National Committee, working to volunteer to get candidates elected, running for president of the United States as a libertarian myself. So I've seen it from every single angle from top to bottom. And I can tell you that it largely does exist as a grift to transfer small amounts of money for whom, $100,000 is a lot of money. And even when Gary Johnson, who performed the highest levels at 3%, like his consultancy and consultant class siphoned that money off like you wouldn't believe. So the Libertarian Party has all the same problems of corruption that the major party have without the added benefit of winning an election every once in a while. So yeah, I agree with you. Shut it down.
Yeah, and also a lot of you mentioned the consultants, Gary Johnson's consultants. A lot of them are failed Republican consultants. They were not even good in the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has traditionally had a problem with consultants that were generally poor. That's why Donald Trump was able to steamroll in 2015 and 2016.
Right.
A lot of the ones that were the worst are now basically either they're finding other grifts or they're working for the bulwark.
Yeah.
We are in agreement. The Libertarian Party needs to be shut down. It's damaging the cause of liberty. It's if you look at the results, both in making America towards a more freer country or just winning anything, the results are just simply not there.
Now, Kevin, I'm not immune to the accusations of being called a grifter. I run a for-profit company here. It's called the For Liberty Network. I live off of my ideals. I advocate for libertarian ideas. I collect subscriptions. I sell coffee. A lot of people accuse me of being the grifter that I accuse others of. To that, I would say that I have done everything possible, at least in my power, my limited power as a regular guy from Peculiar, Missouri, to try and actually spread ideas and try and do actual valuable, useful things for libertarians. And part of that, in my mind, has been to try and spearhead a new wing of the movement that is less concerned about ideological purity and more concerned about tactics, strategy, and coalitions that we can build in order to advance our liberty ideas. So when Vivek Ramaswamy said we need a libertarian nationalist alliance, I was inspired by that. When Javier Milei built the Libertad Avanza coalition out of old conservatives and nationalists and created a liberty movement in Argentina around libertarianism and nationalism, I was inspired to write a manifesto, the Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto. And I hope that it touches the right hearts and minds. It looks like you were at least interested enough. Most of the people attacking me, Kevin, or who are dismissing it, they don't even read it. So even though you obviously disagree with parts of it, thank you for at least reading it. Can I say congratulations for being literate?
Thank you.
And thank you for actually honestly engaging with my ideas. So let's do that right now, okay? So let's talk about this framework that I've built, right? So you came in, Kevin, to the manifesto with your own framework. You're right, classical liberal, right, libertarian populist. You've been writing in this space for years. So what was the argument in my manifesto that either sharpened something you actually believed, or did I push back on any assumptions that you were carrying? Was it a good challenge to your ideas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's absolutely. And I appreciate you for putting this manifesto out. The thing that struck me the most, that I liked the most about it, is you're trying to build a community of doers. What's a problem? One of the biggest problems in the libertarian liberty space is we got people that just want to sit around, navel gaze, talk about philosophy, talk about weird esoteric things that have nothing to that do nothing for the average person. I think we have a compelling argument for everything, for how to build a country, build a society, how to bring prosperity to people, how to make people's lives better. I think we have excellent arguments with that. But you basically get into navel-gazing nonsense like a lot of the Libertarian Party activists like to do. They like to talk about weird stuff like there's some of them are concerned about the age of consent being too high, and then you got a lot of the think tank crowd, especially in the DC Beltway, that just like to navel gaze and just talk about and basically have no idea how to talk to average people, how to talk to the average person just trying to make a living. I think our ideas are great. I just think and for what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a community of doers. I applaud that.
The manifesto argues that liberty without national loyalty eventually will collapse. This is an idea, Kevin, that I propose, that freedom needs a home, that it needs a culture, that it needs a civilization to survive in. I mean, I think you've written that libertarianism is solely a political philosophy, that it doesn't answer cultural questions by design. And so I wonder, do you take that back? And here's why I say that, because Javier Milei has stated specifically he believes that the culture is the first battle that has to be waged. So if libertarianism is solely a political philosophy, then we cede the culture to the left or to right-wing authoritarians who don't believe in libertarian nationalism. So could libertarian nationalism change your mind?
Yes and no. Yeah, I have come to believe that, yes, there has to be a cultural component to it. Without answering cultural and moral questions, libertarianism, a libertarian society will fail. And ironically, I came from that, not from the libertarian nationalists, but ironically if libertarians refuse to engage in the culture, that ultimately harms liberty because and I'm not talking about like, for example, taking rights away from transgender adults or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there has to be character. There has to be a culture conducive to liberty. So personal responsibility, for example. That's an important part of it.
Kevin, one of the most controversial parts of the Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto was the part where I discuss Israel, a topic that used to be discussed more on the fringes of libertarian ideals and is now really sort of come to the forefront of libertarian debates and discussions. But my manifesto grounds the Israel relationship with the United States in more civilizational terms. I'm not an evangelical Christian, so I don't couch it in end times theology. I'm not getting paid by AIPAC, so it's not AIPAC donor politics stuff, but it's more about the shared DNA of the Hebrew Republic and the American Republic. So things like natural law, right? Rights that precede government. So you're a Christian, you're a history buff. Do you think that my argument? Do you think that my argument about Israel as a sort of civilizational shield holds up?
Your argument about Israel really does hold up, and unfortunately, quite a few libertarians have always had an unhealthy obsession with Israel. And unfortunately, a lot of unfortunately, I've found that libertarianism often serves as a gateway ideology to basically not non-establishment ideologies, and unfortunately, one of them is third worldism, which basically is anti-Western in its outlook, and a lot of their outlook, anti-Western outlook, is anti-Israel and often anti-Semitic. Israel, you cannot remove Israel from Western civilization. The Judeo-Christian values that came out of Israel is an important part of it.
Well, I mean, my problem has always been that the defense of Israel, and I wasn't always as ardent a defender as I am now, but that there are legitimate right-wing criticisms of Israeli policy, things like foreign aid, those things need to be discussed. Wagging the dog, questions of American interventionism in the Middle East. There are legitimate right-wing criticisms, but those aren't typically the criticisms that come up to the top. The question is, are you being paid by Jews to have these opinions, et cetera? Right? Attacks on your character rather than actual legitimate policy debates. And so my libertarian nationalism very strategically places Israel as a civilizational shield, in large part because, Kevin, there is already a branch of the libertarian movement that is obsessed with Jews, that they have a form of what I call Jewish derangement syndrome or Israeli derangement syndrome that operates just in the same way Trump derangement syndrome does. So my conclusion is, therefore, the right-wing criticisms of Israel can take a back seat because it's just not as important as all the domestic questions. But I don't want to be associated with those people because they're incapable of making good policy arguments entirely. You'll be talking about the Strait of Hormuz, and they'll sideways it into a conversation about the USS Liberty. You know the type.
About the Jews.
The Jews.
Yes.
Jews. So anyways, I don't want to spend too much of that time. I've been talking about the Israel thing way too much already this morning. I'd like to focus on the libertarian nationalism because it's not purity test libertarianism. It's not the NAP as foreign policy. It's also not about open borders as compassion, right? We're very clearly not anarchists, right? So where do you think that my hardest sell is, right? Who is going to be the most resistant to libertarian nationalism as framing, and why?
All right, the people that are going to be most resistant, I'm going to go within people inside the liberty movement and people outside it. Let's start within the liberty movement. I think your anarchists are going to reject it out of hand because it's not abolishing the state. As a matter of fact, you're pushing the nationalist part, but they don't matter. The next objection you're going to get from a lot of the think tank crowd that's going to reject, especially the DC-based think tank crowd. Think the people that support that. I know Shiki Adamia, who now runs the Unpopulist Substack, former Reason writer. I know she doesn't self-describe as libertarian anymore, but her project is heavily backed by the Institute for Humane Studies. And also the Cato Institute types. They're going to push back against your libertarian nationalist view because they're going to reject, because they're genuinely cosmopolitan, globalist, generally view the term nationalist. Now, let me segue that to the outside liberty movement. I think the nationalist part, both the libertarian and the nationalist part are going to both draw some objections right away. Libertarian, because that brand has been so sullied by a lot of the Libertarian Party types, and the nationalist brand because that label has also been sullied, as I pointed out in my piece, by the experiences of the First and Second World Wars that were partially caused by nationalism.
But don't two wrongs make a right? Don't you take if you add two negatives together, doesn't that equal a positive?
Depends.
No. You pointed out that you disagree with. You're not as supportive as closed borders as I am. you do reject completely open borders for practical reasons. See, my problem was that I read Sheikha Dalmia, and she said specifically in her case for open borders, that doesn't mean that anyone can just come here for any reason. And then she never goes on to define what reasons they should not be allowed to come. So whenever my problem with the open borders, the cosmopolitan globalists that you've discussed here, is that they never, ever, that they always say, well, important caveat, it doesn't mean anybody can come here. Well, is that really even open borders? I mean, that means the borders aren't really open then in some ways. It feels like a rhetorical game that they're trying to play with us.
Yeah, and you have to have some kind of, if you have a nation state, you have to have some kind of border control. And I'm speaking as an immigrant myself. I'm an American living in the Philippines. Married a Filipino, moved over there. But yeah, you have to have some kind of border control, and or your society is going to fail. The question is, what kind of border control? I think you can have secure borders and a compassion and treat people humanely and have reasons and allow a relatively open amount of immigration. Not as much as probably the Cato Institute would like, but you can still. But I still think immigration is generally good. It's just sane people are having a debate over what kind of limits we're going to have to immigration.
We're running up.
And I say this is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, and I say this as a piece. I say this as someone that rejects blanket bans on countries and religions and racial groups from immigrating to the United States. But what I point out is I support ideological vetting for people who come here. I don't want some Somali who's coming here to steal money to open a Leering center. But I also don't want Islamists, communists, and fascists coming to America either. I don't want people that support totalitarian regimes coming here.
Agreed.
Coming to the U.S.
Well, that makes you a fascist, Kevin, according to the Cato Institute.
I know.
If you want to close the borders to fascists coming in, I mean, I had this conversation with Judge Napolitano recently, and he's still very much on the open border side of things, and I asked him, I said, what if a person says specifically, I'm an Islamic terrorist and I'm coming to bomb the new World Trade Center? Should they then be prevented from coming here? And his answer was no. And I at the time, I just was shocked. But that was the end of my flirtation with open borders libertarianism, because I just realized that there is no serious attempt to try and make the ideology work when you literally are allowing terrorists into your country. So,
no, that's the definition of suicidal empathy.
Yeah, it is. It is, and
which is
luxury beliefs.
Which is the ultimate luxury belief.
Correct.
It's all fun and games until somebody actually dies. So
yeah. Kevin, I have great respect for your writing, and congratulations on your move to the Philippines and your Filipino wife, Filipina. Is there anything else,
yes.
Kevin, that you'd like to share with our audience that you think we missed, or if you have a Substack that you'd like to plug? Now's your opportunity.
Absolutely. If you want to read more of my writings, I promise I will be writing more. It's going to be thecapitalistclub.substack.com. It is called The Capitalist Club. We're going to not only be writing about politics, but we're going to be trying to build a community of doers, like Austin is doing with his movement.
Let's do it. Kevin Boyd, I've got your Substack pulled up right now. You can read his thoughts on libertarian nationalism is an absurd oxymoron or a viable strategy to advance the cause of individual liberty. Kevin Boyd wrote that. Check out his Capitalist Club. And Kevin, we'll have to have you back. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We're very grateful. And thank you. And thank you for wrestling with my ideas and not just dismissing them out of hand. I hope you have a wonderful day.
No, I'm all for like I said, I am all for open discussion, debating and debate. We need more of that in the liberty movement.
Absolutely. Have a good one, Kevin. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For America at a time such as this?
My hope for America?
And how do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, look, I mean, my hope for America is what it's always been. I think it's the hope I hope we all share. We want it to continue to be the place where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, where you're not limited by the circumstances of your birth, by the color of your skin, by your ethnicity, but frankly, it's a place where you are able to overcome challenges and achieve your full potential. I think that should be the goal of every country in the world, frankly, but I think in the U.S., we're not perfect. Our history is not one of perfection, but it's still better than anybody else's history, and ours is a story of perpetual improvement. Each generation has left the next generation of Americans freer, more prosperous, safer, and that is our goal as well. But it is a unique and exceptional country, and as we come upon this 250-year anniversary, I think we have a lot to learn and be proud of in our history. It is one of perpetual and continuous improvement, where each generation has done its part to bring us closer to fulfilling the vision that the founders of this country had upon its founding. So,
said it better than I ever could. That's my president. Thank you, Marco Rubio. Thank you to our guest, Judge Napolitano. Thank you to Kevin Boyd, live from the Filipino, from the Philippines. It is Filipino wife. Is that how they say that? I'm not sure. Hey guys, we've got a lot to look forward to. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. I hope you enjoyed the show, that you walk away with it with something to chew on, something to think about. And, thanks for all you do for us. And I'm sorry you missed the bonus content, womp womp. But good news is that you get another chance to unlock it tomorrow. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Exit through the Grift Shop at forlibertyshop.com. Make sure that you guys are visiting the Grift Shop early and often. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you right back again here tomorrow. Oh, and tonight, Liberty Tonight with Brian Piotr at rumble.com/Liberty Tonight. Don't forget to check out his adventures in homeschooling. It's the Wake Up America show, and what is that on? What's Liberty Tonight on? What's Culturama on? What's Cafecito Libre on? What's Freedom Arcade on? Well, that's on the 4 Liberty Network. Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.